Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this public accountability meeting on visible neighbourhood policing. Public accountability meetings are held quarterly. They are designed to monitor the performance and to ensure that the public receives an efficient and effective local police service. Each of these meetings focuses on the public's priorities in my police crime and justice plan and allows me to review the progress being made and to hold the Chief Constable to account. Scrutiny is extremely important for building public confidence and trust in police and services. I made a promise when I was first appointed as PCC to become the public's voice in policing. It's important to me to encourage an open and transparent dialogue with residents so they have greater influence on policing decisions. And that's why these meetings offer residents and victims of crime the opportunity to submit direct questions about policing standards and their own experience of the force. We've received a really good range of questions around visible neighbourhood policing for today's meeting, and I would like to place on record my thanks to all those who have contributed. These will be answered by the Chief Constable and her senior officers later in the meeting. Public accountability and public policing visibility is really important for us all. I often meet with businesses and residents every day in my role, and from these conversations alone, I can tell you with certainty that visible neighbourhood policing is a top priority for the public. The public consistently request more officers on their streets and for these officers to be visible and approachable. Even in my recent precept consultation, 68% of residents cited visible neighbourhood policing as one of their top 5 priorities. Visibility is more than just boots on the ground. It encompasses digital visibility through our social media channels, interactional accessibility, simple power, really just by the presence of uniforms, police cars and buildings in our streets and in our neighbourhoods as that real physical presence. The officers, PCSOs and volunteers who make up our neighbourhood policing teams are the face of the force. I think we can all agree on that. And often the only contact the public has with their local police force is their local neighbourhood officers. So first impressions count. People need to believe they can reach their local officers easily and that they understand the problems in their local communities and they will listen to potential solutions that they suggested. Effective local policing reassures, it makes people feel safe, and it obviously builds confidence as well. Ahead of this meeting, my office organised a short survey to help us understand the current perceptions around visible neighbourhood policing. Almost 9 in 10 respondents said they didn't see the neighbourhood officers regularly in their area, and almost a quarter, 23%, said neighbourhood police officers or PCSOs were easy to approach or speak to in their community, while 46% were not sure and 31% said no. When asked if local concerns were being taken seriously and followed up, only 17% agreed, while 10% said they felt confident that neighbourhood policing is responding to local issues that matter to them. Nationally, trust and confidence in policing has declined in recent years. Declined trust makes it harder for police officers and staff to do their jobs and police by consent, and trust is hard to win back. As part of its mission to rebuild community trust and to improve the way police protect and support residents, the government has announced the Neighbourhood Policing Guarantee back in April last year. This is a flagship programme which is now fully embedded across the force. It has provided named contactable officers in every neighbourhood who can be accessed easily through police.uk website. It's improved digital access for reporting concerns and crime. We've got a guaranteed response within 72 hours to local issues, and we've improved visibility of policing activities on social media and other platforms, and guaranteed police patrols in target areas at peak times, as well as increasing opportunities for residents to set local priorities. In addition to the guarantee, we've also continued to boost the presence by increasing uniformed officers in hotspot areas through Operation PAVE. Thousands of hours of extra police and partnership patrols are being clocked up in communities hardest hit by antisocial behaviour, serious violence and other problems. And we've put £1 million worth of funding that we've secured from the Home Office to good use in 2025-26. In Q3 alone, more than 4,400 hours of extra visible patrols were carried out across hotspot areas of the county and Darlington, while my community safety coordinators continue to work closely with the neighbourhood officers and local communities to ensure residents feel heard, supported and able to use their voice. My office has also supported the government's recent Winter of Action crime crackdown, which also brought further increased visibility patrols to disrupt town centre crime. During the initiative, we worked alongside partners to target known offenders, protect businesses and carry out visible, proactive operations to crack down on the sale of illegal vapes and tobacco. That sort of puts into context some of the things that have been done, but I think it's really important now that we hear from the force. So I'm now going to hand over to Chief Constable Rachel Bacon to introduce herself and her officers who are joining her today.
Good morning, Joy, and thank you to those who are joining us today. I'll go around and we'll introduce ourselves. So as Joy has said, I'm Rachel Bacon, Chief Constable, and with me today is...
Morning everybody, Kieran Irving, I'm the Deputy Chief Constable. Good to see everyone.
Yep, morning everybody, I'm Richie Allen, one of the Assistant Chief Constables.
Good morning everyone, I'm Chief Superintendent Steve Long and I'm the Head of Local Policing.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to be given this opportunity to discuss police visibility within County Durham and Darlington. Visibility remains one of the most powerful ways Durham Constabulary demonstrates its commitment to protecting communities and building trust. High visibility patrols are not simply a reassurance tactic. They are a core part of how the force prevents crime, strengthens neighbourhood relationships and responds quickly when the public need help. Durham Constabulary, as you will all know, has diverse communities spanning busy urban centres, rural villages and coastal communities. Being seen, accessible and engaged is essential to maintaining confidence. And Durham Constabulary demonstrates that it's both visible on the streets and accessible online, meeting the public's expectations of a modern, forward-thinking force. Of course, we use digital platforms to give communities a direct voice, allowing residents to raise concerns and share intelligence. In addition, we have invested in real-time communication to ensure the public are updated on incidents, appeals and crime prevention messages. This keeps the public informed and connected to local policing activity. Durham has also invested heavily to increase its frontline presence, including additional dedicated neighbourhood officers to ensure more patrols, more community contact and faster response times. These officers are not just extra numbers. They represent a deliberate investment in neighbourhood policing, problem solving and early intervention. Their visibility helps deter antisocial behaviour through hotspot policing, disruption of criminal activity and provide immediate support to vulnerable people. It also reinforces the message that Durham Constabulary is rooted in its communities, not distanced from them. The force is firmly committed to visible policing on our roads also, using dedicated officers to deter dangerous driving and target illegal off-road bikes. We continue to invest in strong road visibility, rural communities and busy town centres, ensuring officers are present when communities need them most and building strong relationships with businesses who are impacted by crime and antisocial behaviour. These are clear priorities, backed by investment and embedded in my delivery plan. Our commitment to visibility showcases a force that's proactive, modern, deeply connected to the people it serves. It reflects a policing model built on partnership, trust, and genuine presence, qualities that continue to make Durham one of the most respected, forward-thinking forces. I did hear in terms of the survey that not everyone was recognising that visibility in policing yet. And of course, we've been growing and developing those teams over time. And what I'm going to do now is hand you over to Chief Superintendent Steve Long, who is the force lead for neighbourhood policing. He will discuss this work that is ongoing within the force and our collaboration with key stakeholders to ensure that you, everyone dialed in here today, has a visible policing presence, and Durham Constabulary is focused on being the best at preventing crime and antisocial behaviour. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, bear with me. I'm just going to upload a short presentation. Okay, again, formally, good morning, everyone. Visibility in our communities is vitally important. It reduces crime in our hotspot areas, it increases public safety, and it boosts community confidence. A physical presence is, of course, vitally important, but it's also crucial that the force develops a strong and effective digital visibility platform, and this presentation will cover both aspects. So first of all, I'm going to start on the neighbourhood policing uplift, and we've already touched upon this this morning. So over the last 12 months, we've increased our neighbourhood policing teams quite significantly. Now, what I will say is Durham's got a long tradition of neighbourhood policing with dedicated teams led by neighbourhood inspectors embedded in communities across the entire force area. But over the last 12 months, we've uplifted all of those neighbourhood policing teams with 24 police constables and 3 PCSOs added across the force area. And this investment means there is a named police officer and PCSO in every neighbourhood who are contactable and responsive to local priorities. These officers hold local PAC meetings, which are advertised on the force website and locally, and they tackle local neighbourhood crime and antisocial behaviour. Operation PAVE is the force response to hotspot patrolling over the last 12 months, and the Commissioner mentioned this earlier. You will see this highlights the importance of visibility in hotspot areas. So we've delivered an additional 12,000 hours of visible patrols in our principal towns to tackle ASB and neighbourhood crime. This is, of course, in addition to the normal patrol activity undertaken by our officers and PCSOs. This has resulted in 192 arrests in those hotspot areas. 70 persons were stopped and searched to prevent crime and disorder, and there were 159 fixed penalty notices which were issued in relation to antisocial behaviour. This operation was critically supported by the Special Constabulary, and we've seen a 25% increase in operational duty hours over the last year. Digital visibility is also vitally important so that the public have a reference point to contact us and their neighbourhood officer in their area. So the force website has been updated and now shows the officer and PCSO for each neighbourhood, and the public will receive a reply within 72 hours directly from the neighbourhood team. And they can also see the details about police action being taken to tackle those local issues that have been brought to our attention. I would invite the public to really go on the force website, find out who your local officer is, and engage directly and tell us about what's going on in your community. Now, we also have Keep in the Know, which is a two-way communication system where we already have over 13,000 households registered. And this is another great way to stay informed and contact local officers. Now, we also use social media extensively to show what we're doing every day to tackle crime and antisocial behaviour across the force area. And just in January alone, you can see that we've reached over 18 million social media users. It's a vitally important tool for the force. Visibility on our roads. Chief Constable's already touched upon this. Policing the road network is a force priority. And you can see there just some of the outputs over the last 12 months, which are critical to road safety. 51 vehicles have been taken off the road for antisocial behaviour, and a further 1,250 been dealt with for no insurance, and 138 unlicensed drivers have been uncovered. We've got 799 community speed watch deployments over the last 12 months. That's over 66,000 vehicles which have passed through those speed watch deployments, and over 2,000 educational letters have been sent to educate the public on the importance of maintaining road safety. We've also grown the establishment of police officers within roads policing over the last 12 months. And we've had 3,000 mobile speed camera deployments, which has resulted in over 33,000 drivers falling within enforcement thresholds. And the force continues to use dedicated targeted days of action to tackle off-road bikes and quads, which I'll now cover off in the next slide. Tackling off-road bikes is absolutely a force-wide issue, and we know it's problematic in some of the force areas. We've got dedicated intelligence-led operations with neighbourhood policing teams working with our roads policing colleagues and partners. We have a single email address for reporting off-road bike nuisance when it's not happening. This is critical intelligence for us, and it's really important that the public contact us directly using that email address. We have invested in drone capability over the last 12 months, so we've got an increased use of drones and an uplift in the pilots, and each area neighbourhood policing team now has drone officers who can tackle off-road bikes, utilising the latest technology to target those locations where bikes are stored illegally and gather intelligence to support police action. We also work closely with our local petrol stations to understand the fueling of those off-road bikes, and that's critical community intelligence. And we use community messaging to reinforce the legislation and the risk associated with this illegal off-road activity. We also work very closely with schools with targeted education with young people to prevent serious harm and road deaths. Our rural community is vast. The force covers a large geographical area, so it's important that we engage differently with our rural communities. So Rural Eye has 19 handsets spread across the neighbourhood policing teams and control room, which gives access to 16 rural WhatsApp groups with over 1,500 members, and it really is a crucial way of staying in touch with our rural communities. We have 24 dedicated points of contact across every neighbourhood team, which again strengthens the links between the teams and the community. And we run dedicated operations such as Operation Checkpoint, working with the community to tackle rural crime. Now, we've also expanded recently our shop watch scheme, which has been really successful in town centres, into the more rural areas to give our rural retailers more community confidence and increased visibility with our rural businesses. Which takes me on to my final slide, which is our visibility with businesses. We're actively engaged with our licensed premises through a dedicated team. We have 163 licensed premises across the force, regularly attending pub watch meetings. And these face-to-face meetings are supported by WhatsApp groups. We now have 705 retail businesses engaged and supported through 18 active shop watch schemes. And the force has one of the highest outcome rates for shop theft in the country. And I'll finish with our nighttime economy visibility, which is really important for community safety. We support our licensed premises through visits from our licensing team and also the use of the body scanning drug dog, which has been funded by the PCC. And that concludes my presentation.
Thanks, Steve. That's really, really helpful, and I think really puts into context the extensive amount of work that's going on within the communities and the efforts that we do and to respond to public's concerns. So I think without further ado, it's probably important that we get onto the questions now that the public have sent in to us. So the first question is, the consistency is very important so that residents get to know who their officers are and where and how they specifically can be contacted. This resident wants to know how they can find out who their local police officers are and how do they get in touch with them.
No, thanks, Commissioner. Joy, I'll pick this one up. I'll show how to do it, he says confidently. So the best way is on the website, see if that comes through. Great.
Yeah.
So in terms of the picking up the second part first, perhaps because it's easier, this is just the website main page. You can see there that the address is durham.police.uk. In terms of general contact, if you scroll down to the bottom of the page on the left there, you'll see a link to contact us, and that just takes us to the various different things that our communities might want an update on. In terms of how we would do this then for something specific in your area that you live or somewhere that you want to find out about, you can simply type in street, postcode, or town or village for where you want to do. So I'm going to put Coundon in because back in the day, a much younger version of myself was a neighbourhood officer for that area. So you'll see there that it brings up the main page covering that beat area, which includes Binchester, Middleston and Newfield. So you can see the team members who are involved. So that's the neighbourhood inspector for the area, the sergeant and the officers who are directly involved. And whilst I shan't go through all these because they are very self-explanatory, you can see there's means of how you contact us, meetings and events. So I'll drop into that one. You'll see that's the next public meetings that we're hosting. So hopefully that'll show sort of what we would consider the best way for people to seek out that information.
Thanks, and I think that's really, really helpful and so easy. And I think you've touched upon earlier the extensive reach that we have through the neighbourhood pages, and I know that an awful lot of work's gone on to get that content in there. And it may be like just a question for me is that it's promoting that work that you're doing and how easy that is. I really liked that work through example there. I think that was really helpful. So maybe something that we could pick up after this meeting, just to get that awareness raised, and that this is here, it's there, this is how it's used and how easy it is and how they get to know where the local offices are. So thank you for that example. It's really helpful. My next question is, what groups of staff fall under the neighbourhood policing banner, and who decides who these are?
I'll pick this one up as well. So there's a nationally recognised definition of neighbourhood policing across the whole of UK policing, just to ensure that we have a consistent approach. And the definition comes from something called the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountability, or CIPFA as it becomes known. So CIPFA specifically defined neighbourhood policing as coming under the local policing banner, and that was Steve's head of command. So he has this area under his responsibility. So it's neighbourhood policing, which includes non-emergency response and neighbourhood policing teams. It can include safer neighbourhood teams, but the primary role has to be neighbourhood based. It can also include wider planned response, such as dealing with appointments in those beat areas. But the idea is that this is people who are specifically dedicated to neighbourhood policing in an identified geographical area. So in terms of that, practically for us, basically those are those police community support officers or police constables, police sergeants and police inspectors whose dedicated role is to deliver neighbourhood policing for the force.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got the next question from a resident, which is, it's difficult to speak to an officer who's going past in a patrol car or who's busy dealing with an incident in the community. How's the Chief Constable making sure officers and PCSOs actually engage with the residents, and what happens to the information when given to the police?
So, Andrea, I'll pick this one up as it goes beyond the neighbourhood policing piece and talks a little bit more broadly around how we communicate and deal with incidents reported. And we've covered some of this ground already as part of Steve's and Richie's updates thus far, but I'm going to talk about 4 areas. I'm going to talk about patrol, community meetings, social media, and then information, how we deal with information from the public. So in relation to patrols, the first thing to point out is that pretty much anybody who operates in uniform has a neighbourhood function. They operate in local areas and they look to both respond and deal with and engage with communities right the way across everything we do. And that extends even to our locally based CID and safeguarding detectives. They have a role to play in terms of neighbourhood policing and communication and engagement with our community members. Community engagement is right at the heart of what we do. We expect all of our officers and staff to be able to report that information back into the organisation and inform the work that our dedicated neighbourhood officers do. And that might be through visible patrols, it may be through stopping and talking to people, or more focused, dedicated community interactions, maybe things for specific communities. Right the way across the force area. Of course, Durham is a large geographical area and our officers and staff do need to use vehicles to get from one community to another. So even though you see somebody going past you in a patrol car, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're dealing with an incident. They may actually be on their way to a community engagement event. It just may be that it's in the next town or village. So that takes us on neatly to talk about community meetings. And our main vehicle for this is through a concept that we call PACT, which is police and communities together. And Richie showed on the demo of the website where our meetings are recorded and logged, and they're kept up to date. So members of our communities have got a good idea of knowing when they can come together and meet both local officers, but also colleagues from other services that service the community, such as the local authority, community and neighbourhood wardens, and other people engaged in this environment, where they can talk about community issues at large, not just those issues which affect the police direct, because of course many of the issues that people talk about, such as dog fouling, littering, fly tipping, things like that, they're not actually just for the police, they're for the broader community safety response right the way across all of our partnership network. And as is described, we can see those details on the Force website, and they're published also more broadly through our social media pages. And I know some people don't feel comfortable using the internet directly, but they are linked into both Keep in the Know, our Twitter or X feeds and our Facebook pages, and they can get that information from there. And in addition to that, we conduct regular drop-in activity, primarily with our PCSOs at various points in the community, dropping into things like knit natter and similar things that might happen across all of our communities. Or even we do some what we would call peak time patrols, so that we're present at school gates when children are coming in and out of school, and our other sort of more well publicised couple with a copper type of events. And of course, wherever you see a yellow jacket or a police officer or PCSO out and about in uniform, we'd encourage anybody to interact with them and speak to them, and they'll provide information and offer that reassurance. In the more virtual space, as Steve's already mentioned, we've got an extensive social media reach, and we're amongst the best in the country in terms of our reach through Facebook and Twitter or X. We also delve in a little bit into Instagram, TikTok, and started to think about other methods such as WhatsApp as we go forward. Our neighbourhood teams regularly and routinely post updates on their social media pages with regular updates, weekly roundups. They'll put messages out in terms of local successes, crime prevention messages and alerts to really make sure our community is the best informed it can be. Of course, at a broader level, we have a neighbourhood alert platform, which is provided by a company called Vis-a-Vis, and we brand it locally as Keep in the Know. Steve's already talked a little bit about that. Indeed, some of our senior colleagues were away at the annual conference earlier this week to get a better understanding of how we can expand the reach of that system and how we can make even better use of it. Because even now, where we're able to share community messages with over 13,000 households, we want to be able to expand our reach into the communities using the appropriate systems to both track our activity and publicise community engagement more effectively. Finally, moving on to how we manage and deal with information from the public. You know, in a modern day, we have, like every other force in the country, a centralised force control room, which primarily logs and records reports from the public against a set of national standards by telephone and increasingly through single online home reporting into the force website, just like the demonstration that Richie showed earlier. All of those calls come in, they're assessed against a model which we call Thrive, which is all about understanding threat, harm, risk, vulnerability of victims, and how we can engage better with the communities to conduct our investigations where a crime or a serious incident is reported. Part of that assessment then informs whether we deploy physical resource to an incident, or whether we share it with the neighbourhood policing team as a trend or as a series of incidents, which might then prompt the response. So even though you might not get an individual response by a neighbourhood officer or PCSO to a particular incident, that doesn't for 1 minute mean that we aren't responding in more general terms to maybe trends of activity. And an example of that would likely be things where we see individual incidents of antisocial behaviour might be reported. We might not respond to the caller as an individual, but we may put responses and patrols into that local area more broadly. And it is often the case that if you don't see us standing on the street corner when you're looking out of the window, you'd think we're not there, but I can promise you that we are. And the record numbers that we have of neighbourhood officers and PCSOs, certainly in living memory, would point to our reach in that regard. When we are out and about, we provide officers from the information from the control room to our officers, so that helps us get them to be patrolling in the right places at the right times. And of course then we trust them to make the right judgments, and for them to rely upon their training and their CPD to make the right choices about how they patrol and where they get to. The type of policing that we adopt and push through in relation to visible policing responding to incidents and broader that community events is that we get lots of information pushed our way, and we need to make sure that those officers can make best judgments on what they need to record, such as crime or intelligence or other information that will help inform their own patrol planning, and then how we might deal with that lower level community concern, which we might not necessarily formally record because the rules don't push us to do that. And of course we want to be certain that for as much as we can, we keep officers on the streets by not creating an unnecessary burden of recording every conversation and every interaction with the public, and we rely on our officers' professional judgment to do that.
Thanks, Kieran. I think that was really comprehensive. The next one moves on to the money, the funding. So with the increase on the police and precept, I expect to see a visible presence in the community. I've not seen a police officer in the streets for 5 years. How is my money contributing to increasing visible neighbourhood policing?
So Andrea, I'm going to keep hold of that one in the same vein. I think it's important to reference the precept presentation that the Chief Constable put to the Police and Crime Panel last month to speak to that in a bit more detail. Policing is a complicated business. It's a complex business in the modern day, and a lot of our offending and a lot of the incidents that we respond to don't necessarily result in a direct visible policing presence or a policing attendance. Very often we will send detectives or other specialists to respond to incidents, and we may undertake also covert activity, which the point of that is that it isn't seen. So we do recognise, however, that there is an important role for us to play in terms of being able to manage the activity that we do that is reactive, but also the activity that we do that is both proactive and visible to our communities, so that people are seen and our officers and community police officers are seen in amongst our towns and villages. This depends on a lot of factors, and as is described in the Chief's presentation, you look at lots of things that a police force needs to be able to deliver to keep the totality of our communities safe, meaning that on occasion we aren't visible all the time in every community at the same time. However, what I would say is that with the numbers that we have in neighbourhood policing, we are in a better place than many parts of the country to be able to deliver visibility, and we already do that. Steve's already described the over 12,000 additional hours that were presented in key areas under Operation PAVE, supported by Joy's office in relation to that, and targeted activity that we do through our packed meetings and social media presence, keeping the know, etc., which I've already spoken about. As we move forward under the neighbourhood guarantee, with the uplift of both officers and PCSOs into our neighbourhood teams, having that named officer in every community, as Richie's been able to describe in probably 3 or 4 mouse clicks from the Force website, you can very quickly get to who is your dedicated officer, and there's contact details for those officers there. And where people can't use the website and aren't necessarily confident enough to contact us via email, we have a direct line into the Force control room, which we are publicising for people to be able to make direct contact with their neighbourhood officer on the basis of either a message or a voicemail being left. And everything we do in relation to all of the money that comes into the force, whether that be centrally funded or funded by our local community members as part of the precept, is done to deliver community reassurance and build trust and confidence in our communities. So even though you might not see us on every street corner at every moment of the day, please be assured that we are here for you and we're doing our level best to keep everybody safe.
Thank you, Kieran, and obviously Richie. I think just those questions of and the really thorough and detailed answers have been very, very valuable. And I'm thinking, that the work that you're doing, I know how you're looking at the options, and how we getting using innovation and getting that in the messaging out. I think that's really important. But to have that open and accessible approach is very, very welcome, and I'm really keen after this recording, obviously we get this out into the community so people see that and feel it and understand where they can go. So that's really, really helpful. But I've got a few more questions to go. So the next question is from a resident who lives in a rural urban fringe area. They feel that the antisocial behaviour in their area is spreading from urban hotspots to semi-rural areas. That's given perpetrators the opportunity to disperse on powered machines to evade the police. They want to know what the force is doing to address the issue and increase visibility and patrols in rural areas to ensure that rural communities receive the same services as those in towns and city centres.
I'll pick this one up, Joy, just to give the dep a bit of a rest. So obviously conscious that Steve's covered quite a few elements of this off in his presentation, but I'll reiterate a few points and maybe add another bit of context. So in terms of that force-wide focus on antisocial behaviour, from a sort of strategic planning level, antisocial behaviour clearly is a golden thread and key part of the Chief Constable's delivery plan. And of course, Commissioner, from your perspective through your police crime and justice plan, antisocial behaviour is a force priority. So within the force, we use something called a control strategy, which in essence highlights those key areas that as a force we want to put resource to target our understanding of what's going on around those areas. So for reassurance, antisocial behaviour forms one of those areas, and that's managed by the other Assistant Chief Constable in terms of accountability for members of the force, John McAdam, who supports that piece of work. The head of neighbourhood policing, Superintendent Dean Haythornthwaite, who reports directly into Steve, is the force lead for antisocial behaviour within his area of business. So again, just shows that we make sure we have seniority over something which we know is of concern to our neighbourhood areas, and is something that we of course take very seriously and proactively police. So Dean chairs a force-wide meeting in relation to antisocial behaviour as well. The DEP's covered off a lot of the wider partnership stuff, so again I shan't reiterate that, but just shows the importance as well of working with our key partners to tackle this issue. In terms of the bikes, so we have dedicated and recognised operation across the force for tackling off-road bikes. This is called Operation Endurance. And as Steve referenced in his presentation, the idea of this is that we work cross-command after understanding where these pinches are in our community areas, and specifically in the areas that the person who sent this question in absolutely covered through this operation. So that works with our roads policing teams and our neighbourhood teams coming together, and I hope that people have seen some of the really good results that we've had as a result of that, which have been published on the Force website and our social media pages. And for those people who might attend the local PAC meetings, they'll have had those updates as well. Again, just reiterating some of the tools that we use to tackle these. The use of drones has been really important for us, and if you look on our YouTube channel, you'll see some excellent examples of that. And we've been able to increase the number of drones that we've got and the number of drones pilots from funding received from your office, Commissioner. We also work on wider education to the community, specifically specifically parents regarding the legal status of some of these high-powered machines, be it the electrical ones or more traditional quad and off-road bikes. So we really target education with schools. Steve's mentioned the work that we do with petrol stations as well, just to prevent filling up on the forecourts. And we work with housing providers to gather information and intelligence on where these bikes are being stored. And again, Steve mentioned that single point of contact email for community to share images and videos of offenders, which we'll proactively work with. With regards to the rural side of things, we've spoke a lot about that rural eye, and we'll have a force lead for rural issues, who's Inspector Reeves. So his policing neighbourhood area is that includes the Dales, Crook and Barnet Castle, but he also acts as a bit of a Spock for the force in terms of upskilling the rest of our neighbourhood teams, just to ensure that we're sharing all that good practice that goes on up there. We're engaged fully with the Safer Countryside Partnership, which is chaired by the Deputy PCC. So again, just make sure that we get that cross-cutting representation with all of our partners and our communities who attend that meeting. So our attendance at that meeting is from PCSO up to superintendent level, so that we get that real good understanding of the boots on the ground view and how that can influence that, but also up to the superintendent in charge of neighbourhood policing. Lastly, we also keep a real close eye on national best practice. Sadly, this is an issue that goes beyond the force's boundaries. It certainly is a national issue. So we make sure that we're plugged into national best practice. So that can be things about how we work with partners, specifically fire around storage of things like these high-powered batteries, and also trading standards.
Thank you, Richie. I think that's for me. There's a lot of work going on within the rural areas, and obviously investment. And I think, you know, you've talked about, both yourself and Steve have talked about the rural eye, and probably's got one of the best rural voluntary schemes in the country, and it's down to the people and the relationship with the police as well. And just on that, I think it have to say that it is very much, we do need residents to ring in and to report any issues as well. So that's very much, you know, a call to local residents if they have these issues, as well as asking the question. We do need to know that they're reporting it as well, so you can use that intelligence and data to inform your operations and obviously the drone flights, etc. So really, you know, we've come a long way in the last couple of years, but I think it's very much down to that partnership approach, but also the links with our rural communities, which we really welcome and appreciate as well. My next question is, how do the police communicate and keep residents informed about what their strategies are to deal with specifics like off-road bikes that matter to the community, especially those, this is sort of, who don't use social media?
Yeah, I'll pick this one up as well. So I think we've covered a few examples of that. So yeah, that why social media is a key part of our communication. We spoke about the wide reach. We of course recognise that not everybody is on social media, and you know, we ensure that we don't become over reliant on that and you know, see it as the only way of contacting our communities. So again, just maybe reiterating some of the other ways that we do this. So those packed meetings are really a key thing for us, and as I showed earlier, you can see where they are in the areas that you live. So that gives us some really good feedback from our communities, mostly in person. We also work with other key community members such as councillors, schools, etc., both to share our messages, but also to receive feedback from those important stakeholders so that they can tell us what they're hearing as well about what's going on in their communities. We've made a couple of references to the neighbourhood alert and keeping the know. So whilst it's a digital system through being email based, it's not specifically social media, and I think, you know, hopefully we would catch more people who do see email as being accessible. We currently have over 13,000 subscribers to that system, and the Deb mentioned about having members of staff down at a conference just to see how we can use that even more. So something that Steve and I have been speaking about over the last few weeks is how do we get that even broader, and what we're really keen to do is ensure that we open up two-way communication, because we are conscious, particularly through social media, it's a little bit us talking to our communities, and we really don't want to miss any opportunities to get that feedback from our communities telling us how we're doing, what might be concerning us, and what they would see as their priorities. So that wider use of keeping the know is something that we're really keen to progress. We also use local media, so the Forces media team regularly release press updates regarding campaigns or community initiatives and successful operations. So hopefully people would see the wider work of the force on that. So you'll hopefully see coverage in local newspapers and on radio and TV, and certainly local channels, but also, you know, some of the excellent work that's done does make national mainstream media as well. And lastly, the force does have a pretty vibrant YouTube channel. So again, not directly social media. If people just want to see some of the things that we've been getting involved in, then the YouTube channel for the force is potentially another way that people can go just to see what we've been doing.
Thank you. And I think it, like you say, looking at all the channels, there is a lot, and sometimes there's a lot of traffic there as well. And I think as both, I think everybody's mentioned about, it isn't just about the social media. You are looking at other tools. Obviously, you've got your presence on the street, but I think where we've got 13,000 people registered, I think there's an opportunity there to increase that at the neighbourhood level. And I know I'm a big supporter of keeping the know. Because I get information directly to me, whereas if I'm watching Facebook, I have to see it. So it's not personal to me, but it's good to see the work that's going on. But the keeping the know actually comes to me. So it tells me about my local packed meetings. It tells me about if I want to register my Ring doorbell. It tells me when the opportunities are, and obviously links to other things. But one of the things I've noticed recently, again, just it fits on what you've just said there, Richie. It asks for feedback. Is this information relevant? Did you find it useful? Whatever. So it isn't just one-way communication. And so very keen that you've looked at what's happening now, like in the conference, because I can see the difference in the last couple of months. What I'm being asked and what I'm being told has been really, really helpful, and I can see it developing as well as a tool. So I think it is a question that I'm often asked, because not everybody is on social media, and I can see from what everybody said today that that's a real area there. You're looking at it in the whole to ensure that we get the messages out to those who need it, because there's a lot of really good work going on, but it's making sure that it's getting to the people to tell them what's happening, but also the opportunities to have that two-way conversation as well. Thank you.
And I think for the final question, I think the force have answered a lot of it, because it's been very similar themes obviously this morning, but I will ask it in case there's anything else that the force want to add. So most residents are willing to engage and support if only the police and local councillors and partners were actively being seen more frequently in the local community itself. How are the police working effectively with other partner agencies to tackle crime and allow for more officers to be on the street? Thank you.
So Andrea, I'll pick this one up to return Richie's favour to me of giving his voice for a rest. I think the first thing to say around this is we work really effectively, we believe, with all of the partners in the community safety space. But we do need to recognise that many of those partner agencies have other responsibilities that sit outside crime, disorder, and antisocial behaviour, and it's always going to be a negotiation to make sure that we get the best effect for our communities. We are fortunate that as well as the Chief Constable being in charge of the force here, she's also the national lead for all things relating to local policing. So we're often at the forefront of new initiatives in terms of understanding the best research and the best approaches that are available to policing. And we're able to take those things forward at a really early stage. And we continue to have the benefit of that influence at a national level, which is really strong start for us. As a group of executive leaders, we meet regularly with our executive lead counterparts in both Durham County Council and Darlington Borough Council to have conversations about how we can work together most effectively at the executive level across the whole range of activities that interest both police and our neighbouring partners. Then if we move to a more formal strategic level, the community safety partnerships, which are statutory bodies across both Durham and Darlington, are in place, and the force has prominent roles and prominent chairing roles in terms of both of those structures. And they're there to drive and task a partnership activity to reduce crime and disorder, and they're statutory responsibilities which all of our partners are bought into. Sitting underneath those community safety partnerships, each of them have subgroups in relation to things like antisocial behaviour, serious violence and drugs, to pick out those key themes that impact on the well-being and the sense of safety across all of our communities. And they're also linked quite strongly into both children's and adult safeguarding, broader criminal justice activity, and also those other areas that aren't necessarily directly responsibilities of the police service, but also those things that affect in the background in terms of making sure that communities feel safe through effective street lighting, litter collection and similar, and they all play into this whole pool of trying to ensure our communities are as safe and resilient as they possibly can be. Moving underneath that to a more tactical level, at each of the localities which broadly relate to our neighbourhood areas, those areas are supported by what we call MAPs, or multi-agency problem-solving groups. And those groups are attended by police, local authority, fire service and other key stakeholders and partners, and they take a particular role in terms of addressing those local problems as they exist and putting partnership responses in there. And that's where the key links are in place for our local councillors as they work together, using either funding that they have or the influence that they can bring to bear on the local authority and other agencies to ensure that resolution to problems are brought as quickly and as effectively as they possibly can. We've got plenty of other examples of partnership work, specifically including things like our integrated offender management programs, where we work closely with probation, local authority and other agencies to try and ensure that those people who've convicted of offences but are living in our communities are able to be supported along a path of not committing further crime. And that's done in conjunction with health, particularly around mental ill health in the current climate, but also working to ensure that those individuals get opportunities to get work, get stable housing, so that they're not then tempted to move back into a life of crime. And then sitting underneath this, and perhaps the most important part of the engagement, is that day-to-day engagement that exists between our neighbourhood policing teams at Inspector Sergeant, PC and PCSO level, with our local authority colleagues perhaps in housing offices, working in all of those areas, antisocial behaviour prevention, the day-to-day interaction between our PCSOs and our neighbourhood wardens, working right the way across in terms of, you know, things like noise nuisance, problem parking, all of those things which cause fuss and create issues in local communities, which might not necessarily be the direct responsibility for the police in Durham and Darlington, but will be the joint responsibility for all agencies working together to try and improve the environment for all of our communities and their members.
Thank you. And I think thank you to everybody for the time this morning. Really comprehensive answers to some really good questions posed by residents. So very much thanks to them. Before I bring it to a conclusion, and just to sum up the presentation and the accountability session, Rachel, is there anything else that you want to add? And I just want to say that I think that the Deputy touched upon it, that, you know, we are very fortunate, the residents of County Durham and Darlington are very fortunate to have a chief who's at the forefront of this work with a national lead. And so anything, you know, we have an opportunity to influence nationally, but also you bring things back, and I know you do, of the best practice that we can possibly do in this area. Is there anything that you want to add just before we move to close?
Thank you, Joy. I just really wanted to reflect that I still hear the fact that people aren't seeing the police as often as they want. We are going to increase neighbourhood police officer numbers again in the coming year. We're absolutely committed to ensure that we're out and about, that you will see us, and you can see an enormous amount of work going on within the constabulary to make that a reality. So thank you for the questions. It is really good to highlight what we're doing. But please be reassured, we will do more. We keep trying, we keep working, we keep wanting to be more visible and more accessible to all of the people that live in County Durham and Darlington. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we all agree that policing shouldn't be a postcode lottery. Neighbourhood policing should be strong and compelling and reconnect with our communities. And we know, all of us know, it matters a great deal to everyone that our officers seen doing the job that they're paid for. Sometimes, you know, they are, when they're behind the scenes, they are doing that job as well. But we also appreciate that they do like to see people out in the communities, in the neighbourhoods as well. And my plan recognises this, and I will continue to do everything in my power to ensure people receive the visible neighbourhood policing that they deserve, and obviously to work with the chief to achieve that. Visible neighbourhood policing means something to all of us. As a resident of County Durham myself, I understand that residents appreciate how important it is to have that visible, accessible officers on duty and in our communities, and seeing the benefits of getting that information out into police.uk and seeing who our officers are, who our PCSOs are, when the packed meetings are on, the opportunities, looking at the crime that's occurring and the antisocial behaviour in the area. It's all there, and I think that work has been really valuable, and it's just getting that information out to the communities now. So I value neighbourhood policing very, very highly. We've got some excellent officers and we've got some excellent partners, and we really want to mortar and build on all that work that we do, and it's a real challenge for us. So it hasn't been easy, as everybody knows, who's listened to have opportunity, because of the amount of funding that we receive, because of our low council tax base, which limits how much additional income we can generate each year for investment in frontline officers and the public's priorities. I believe that every neighbourhood deserves dedicated officers who know their patch, who understand residents' concerns and can tackle problems before they escalate. And I believe that local people must retain the power to set their own priorities. Nationally, debates continue about local governance and about the future of PCCs. These are massive changes, and also the changes to potential to forces. But we are very much, both the chief and her team and myself and my team, are very much important about delivering what matters to local people. So we're really important that we've got a plan and we're really delivering on that plan. It's an ambitious plan, but we're totally fully behind that. So when we're looking at the future holds, we can continue to deliver what matters to local people. Their voice matters to me, and it obviously I'll bring that voice into the policing as well. So we want more police on our streets. We want stronger action against serious harm. We want a policing service that put victims and communities first, and both myself and the chief are very passionate about delivering a first-class victim service. So that's really, really helpful. A really important topic that I'm sure that'll get a lot of opportunities for us to share the content with our communities as well. So it brings this to a close for this public accountability meeting, which will be available shortly on YouTube and and we'll promote it on our social media sites as well. So thank you very much. Thank you to the team and also to the residents for making this a really valuable accountability session. Thank you.
Thank you.